I'm really interested in the relationship that you've presented between primates and humans. Started off by talking about social grooming, so just tell us a bit about why that's important in primates.
Okay, monkeys and apes, certainly all the anthropoid primates, spend an inordinate amount of time during the day grooming each other, leafing through the fur, picking out the bits of rubbish that's got into it, perhaps picking the scabs off their skin, those kind of things. So it performs a hygienic function, that's perfectly true, but they do it far more than they need to just for hygiene. What that is reflecting is the fact that that system has been kind of co-opted or borrowed, if you like, to underwrite social relationships. That's what creates friendships, basically, which is the glue, literally the glue, which holds not only two friends together, but through a group of friends holds the group together.
And because we've evolved and we've lost a lot of our body hair, we do this kind of social grooming differently now. So how does it manifest itself now in humans?
So, yes, I mean, it was an inconvenience losing off fur, but I'm sure it was for a good purpose whenever it happened. But it does mean we have rather limited fur to leaf through to get the grooming effect. So what we've done is, since we don't have any fur to clean, what we've done is just adapted behaviors which move the skin. Stroking, caressing, patting, hugging, all these kind of things move the skin. And that substitutes for us social grooming of the kind that monkeys do with fur.
And tell us a little bit about the kind of relationship between that sort of behaviour, stroking, caressing kind of behaviour, and endorphins.
So the whole grooming mechanism here and the neural system connecting it, what it does is to send a neural signal up to the brain, to the endorphin producing centers in the brain, and trigger the release of endorphins in the brain. Essentially it floods the brain with endorphins. Now endorphins are part of the brain's pain management system, which is very complex, involves very many different channels. There's a fast pain management system, which are the ones that cause you to pull your hand away very fast when you accidentally stick it in the fire. They operate extremely quickly. The stroking-based ones are extremely slow. They come into play afterwards, rather like taking an aspirin. So the fast pain system says, get your hand out of there, don't make the thing worse. And then after a little while, the endorphin side kicks in and says, here, take an aspirin just to keep the pain down for a bit. So that's how it's kind of working, as it were. This has been adapted to this pain control mechanism because of the way the endorphins work, because of their chemical nature. Whereas we get destructively addicted to morphine and other opiates, we don't get addicted at all in that sense to endorphins. They come back refreshed every time we trigger the system. It works just the same as it always has. But what that does is create exactly the same kinds of morphine-like effects, which is a sense of relaxation and being at peace with the world, and the world is lovely and wonderful, and whoever you're doing it with is lovely and wonderful, and that's what's creating the bonding sense. And it's also, of course, reducing your senses of social stress and reducing your symptoms of depression. So it's the best antidepressant medicine you can have, and it's free, and you don't have to bother your doctor. Just find a friend and do some grooming.
And the extension of that become a social toolkit, as you described it. My favourite of your slides where you have, singing and dancing and laughter and storytelling and rituals. Take us on through that journey.
Yeah, so the problem with grooming is, as we know it, from personal experience, it's physical touch is a very intimate thing. So you don't do it with all and sundry, and especially strangers. That's not just because we're British, everybody's the same, right? You do it with people you have meaningful relationships with, and it's the same in primates. Now, because of that intimacy, and the fact it's very time-consuming, there's an upper limit to the amount of time we spend in grooming, if you're a monkey, and that then limits the size of groups they can have. I mean, in theory, they could spend 24 hours a day grooming. They could have a very big group. But clearly, there is a problem here because you do need to sleep and you also need to eat. You're going to die if you don't do some eating. So this kind of, the time problem sets up this limit on the size of group. So when humans or our ancestors were evolving these much bigger groups, leading up to the kind of size of communities that we now have and reasonably comfortably live in, they had to find ways of expanding the grooming circle in order to keep these big groups bonded. And the way they did it was essentially to discover that lots of behaviors trigger the endorphin system. Now, some of these are biologically built in, as it were, genetic, if you like. So laughter is one of those. That was probably the earliest. Came in probably about 2 million years ago into our lineage, although it's actually exploits a behavior that we share with the great apes and indeed with the other anthropoid monkeys. But also they discovered a lot of behaviors that have no genetic component to them, they just already exist. But they discovered if you do those behaviors, it does have the same effect. Very often because it's stressful for the body to do. They're often based around activities, or they're emotionally stressful in the mind, and both of those will trigger the endorphin system. And because we're not touching anybody, it's this virtual touch at its best. Long before AI invented it, we can have much, much bigger groups. You know, a singing group or a dancing group can be very, very big, several hundred people. But what happens is you come out of that feeling, still having not touched anybody, but done a lot of laughter or whatever it is, or singing together, feeling that you're bonded and a member of a community. And you're telling each other your life stories in a way you would never tell the strangers. And theatre directors are very, very familiar with this. They refer to it as, you know, an audience when it comes in as a group of strangers, watches their play. If the play works, doesn't matter if it's comedy or a tragedy, if the play works, they go out as a community. And you can see it. People are walking up the aisles, talking to each other now. They walked in kind of, you know, where's my seat, and try and sit down without disturbing people. But at the end of the show, they're all talking to each other and engaged with, you know, telling their life stories and stuff. It's real magic.
Final question then. You've sat around listening to a lot of BFRB talks today. I'm wondering what you're taking away, how your work relates to this.
Yeah, I think what we're providing, if you like, is an understanding of the mechanisms involved in these kind of hair pulling and skin picking activities, which both explains why people should want to do it, because it's triggering the endorphin system, and that's pleasurable. It's giving you a pleasurable sense. It's relaxing you in a stressful situation. It's actually allowing you to relax and cope with this stressful situation, and particularly in the context, you know, say of rejection. It allows you to cope with rejection in the same way. In effect, these behaviors are exploiting a perfectly natural system that is actually very, very important to our everyday normal social life. If, you know, without it, we wouldn't have a social life. I think and be able to live in the communities that we live in. So it's a perfectly natural thing. All that's happened, my interpretation is all that happened is individuals have picked on an activity, pulling hair or whatever it may be, which works very effectively because of the endorphin system, and in some sense become behaviorally addicted to it, which is all that's happened with singing and dancing. That's exactly what's happened with singing and dancing. You know, our ancestors just discovered if you did this stuff, it made you feel so much. They had no idea why, of course. It just made you feel more relaxed and friendly and open and part of a community. And in some sense, it's kind of replacing parts of that, but not all of it. Because actually, it would be better to do it in company. We get a much better effect from all these endorphin things. It actually ramps up the effect. It's amazing if you do it in company rather than alone. So you can go to the gym, and doing your weightlifting and running on the thing, you know, gives you an endorphin hit. If you do it as a group and go jogging, you get double the hit. It's absolutely amazing. So my recommendation is, no, do it socially, in which case you might as well go jogging.